To get the command block, you need to type /give at self command_block. There are three types of command blocks, namely impulse, repeater, and chain. This is an impulse block and is the one you'll likely use the most when starting commands. It is the standard command block, and I'll start by teaching you about commands with the impulse block. It simply needs a redstone input, and it will activate. For the settings, we first have the command input. This is the place you put commands you would normally put in the chat. It is not necessary to put the / in a command block, although I do it because it helps when I copy and paste commands. After that, we have a list of commands. This will help you remember which command refers to what entity. The previous output will tell you the output of the last command that was ran, regardless whether it succeeded or failed. Useful to check what happened with the command. On the left, we have the hover node. The text you put in here will show when you hover over the command block. I still prefer to use signs. Signs have more space for text and always displays the text. Next, we have the block type. You use this to change the block to an impulse, chain, or repeater. For now, we will stick with impulse. Condition. This is not something that I use on an impulse block. The condition checks whether there is a command block behind it that has a successful execution of its most recent command. This will be useful more in the chain command blocks, so for now we'll move on. Needs redstone. This is another one that isn't used much on an impulse command block. With redstone active, it will execute every time you give it a redstone signal. If the command already has a redstone signal, then it will need to cease before it can be activated again. This is why always active on an impulse isn't that useful, since it can only activate once. Although it is useful when placing by hand or by commands. The execute on first tick is exclusive to repeater command blocks. Delay in tick means once activated, how many ticks will pass before the command is executed. Ticks. There are 20 ticks per second. That means if you want a command to execute after 1 second, you put a 20 in the tick delay. If you want the command to activate after 1 minute and 34 seconds, you will first convert it into seconds, and then multiply 94 with 20 to get 1880 ticks. Put it into the tick delay, and then after 1 minute and 34 seconds it will execute. If the redstone signal is removed before the amount of tick have passed, it will not execute. I probably should have picked a shorter time. Cancel. If you made changes to your command block and don't want it saved, press the cancel button. It will exit the command block without changing anything. Next, we have the repeater block. It is most likely second command block you'll use the most. Everything on the right is the same, including the hover node, block type, and condition. The condition is also not really used on repeaters. When set to needs redstone, the repeater will execute the command every tick that it has a redstone signal. When set to always active, this will execute every tick the block exists. Delay in tick will prevent the command block from repeating every tick and instead have it execute once every set number. The default 0 is no delay. 1 means it will execute every 1 tick. 1 is the same speed as 0. 2 means it will execute every other tick. 20 means it will execute once every second. Execute on first tick means it will execute the moment it is activated and then again after a set number of ticks. If it is turned off, it will only execute after the set number of ticks. Chain blocks works differently. Instead of just relying on a redstone signal, they also need a pulse. Pulse can be created by activating either an impulse block or a repeater block. The pulse will move in the direction of the arrow on the command block and will continue through chain blocks. The arrow of the command block will point in the opposite direction you are looking when placing them. For these blocks, you most likely set it to always active since you will be using the pulses instead of redstone, although you can set it to needs redstone to prevent it from executing. Keep in mind a pulse can still pass through a chain command block even if it doesn't activate. Also remember that buttons and levers will give a redstone signal to the block it is on, as well as any adjacent blocks. A redstone block only gives a redstone signal to adjacent blocks. This example, you activate an impulse block that summons a cow and sends a pulse down the chain. The second command block will try to execute on a zombie, but will fail. Because that block failed, the next condition block will not execute, but the pulse will continue to the last block and kill the cow. This example is a repeater that continually tests for a player in a 3-block radius. The repeater is continually sending a pulse to the chain block, but because it is conditioned, it will only execute once the repeater successfully detects a player in range. If you make a long chain with all the blocks conditioned because of one single test for at the start, there might be problems where a single command doesn't execute, and then the entire chain gets broken because of that. This example will repeatedly test for a player, and once it did, one conditioned chain block will set a redstone block in front of it. This will activate the impulse block and delete the redstone block, allowing it to receive another redstone signal. The pulse will then carry through to the chain, and the chain can run without needing any conditions.